Lorne Greene often said that if there was one thing he truly believed in, it was loyalty, and that Michael Landon had become like a real son to him during their years together on Bonanza. But the story of how Greene reached that point, how he became the calm patriarch whose voice could command a room, was far more turbulent than the reruns ever suggested. Before he was the unshakable Ben Cartwright, before he was the voice that millions recognized instantly, he was simply a boy named Leon Hyman Greene, born on February 12, 1915, in Ottawa during one of the most brutal winters Canada had ever endured. Temperatures plunged to 40 degrees below zero, and his family struggled just to stay warm. His father, Daniel Greene, had fled Russia in 1902 after surviving violent attacks against Jews. He arrived in Canada with nothing more than a few tools and the hope of a safer life. In Ottawa, he opened a tiny shoe repair shop, often earning only $8 a week during the war. The family lived in a cramped two-room apartment on Clarence Street, where 6 people squeezed together: Daniel, his wife Dora, their children, and Leon's immigrant grandparents who didn't speak a word of English. Leon slept on a makeshift bed of flour sacks filled with crumpled newspapers. Every winter he could hear the wind whistle through the cracked windows. In 1918, when the Spanish flu swept across the world, Ottawa lost 200 lives in a matter of weeks. 3-year-old Leon caught pneumonia so severe that the local doctor admitted there was little hope. But his grandmother, relying on old country remedies, fed him raw garlic and honey every hour for weeks. The house smelled of harsh medicine and worry, but the child somehow survived. That winter marked him. Years later, he would still remember the taste of garlic and the terror of not being able to breathe. His mother worked 14-hour shifts in a factory for 15 cents an hour, returning home so exhausted she could barely stand. Yet she always brought back torn newspapers scavenged from wealthier neighborhoods. She used them to teach Leon how to read, pointing to words under dim lamplight. She believed, perhaps more fiercely than anyone in the family, that education could save her son from poverty. Then came March 15, 1922. Leon was 7 years old, sitting on the curb outside his father's shop, when at 2:47 in the afternoon, flames burst through the windows. Faulty wiring had ignited the vapors from shoe polish, and within minutes the shop was engulfed. Daniel ran inside, desperate to save his tools. He barely escaped, suffering burns to both hands. $400 worth of tools, worth the equivalent of $6,000 today, were gone. With no insurance and $200 still owed in rent, the family was evicted. They moved into the basement of the Hebrew Benevolent Society on Chapel Street, a cold, damp room shared with 11 other families. Leon slept on an old army cot. At night, he began to have nightmares about fire, hearing imaginary screams in the dark. That fire etched itself into his mind so deeply that he would grow up terrified of debt and determined never to rely on a single source of income. Hollywood would eventually learn that he was an actor who planned like a banker. By 1928, the 13-year-old Leon was attending Lisgar Collegiate when he was cast as a minor background tree in a play called The Enchanted Forest. He had only 2 lines, but on opening night he stepped forward and, instead of speaking the scripted words, delivered a 5-minute satirical speech mocking Ottawa's city council. He joked about corruption, bribery, and even referenced the $11,000 scandal involving Mayor Frank Plante. The audience was silent for a moment, stunned, then erupted into laughter. 3 school board members stormed out. The mayor's wife demanded he be expelled. Leon was suspended for a week, but his drama teacher saw something in him: fearlessness, timing, and a voice that carried. That night taught him that performance held real power, and it also taught him that politics could be dangerous if wielded without caution. In 1931, with the Great Depression crippling Canada and unemployment reaching 27%, Leon grew fascinated by radio. Using $2.75 saved from newspaper delivery, he collected broken wires and tubes from junkyards and built a 5-tube superheterodyne radio in the coal cellar. His father wouldn't let him use electricity, so he worked by candlelight, burning his fingers more than once. When the machine finally crackled to life, picking up distant stations from Chicago and Pittsburgh, he felt something awaken, a sense of connection to a world beyond his cramped rooms. His mother, fearing the lure of show business, smashed the radio with a rolling pin when she heard him imitating announcers late at night. She had bitter memories of a relative who chased fame and ended in ruin. Leon simply rebuilt the radio in a neighbor's garage and kept practicing. From midnight to 2 in the morning, he read newspaper headlines into a homemade microphone, imagining an invisible audience listening. By June 1933, Canada's unemployment hit 30%. Leon graduated high school with no clear future. His uncle offered him a job at the Imperial Bank for $15 a week, steady pay in desperate times. But Leon refused. Instead, he enrolled in acting classes at the Ottawa Little Theatre. Tuition was $8 a month, and he had only $23 saved. His father exploded in rage. Neighbors heard the fight and called the police. Leon, determined to reinvent himself, took the name Lorne, inspired by Scotland's River Lorne, and pawned his father's gold pocket watch to pay for his first semester. The betrayal caused a 3-year rift in the family, but Lorne had chosen his path. In 1939, after returning from study at New York's neighborhood playhouse, Lorne Greene joined CBC Radio in Toronto at age 24. Within months, he became the network's main national newsreader. His voice, deep, resonant, grave, captured the country's attention. Listeners trusted him. He even invented a reverse stopwatch for announcers, a device that helped them time live segments precisely. But when World War II began and he started reading casualty lists nightly, people began calling him the voice of doom. He read through tears more than once, though no one could hear the tremble. His reports reached more than 2 million listeners. Families froze at the sound of his voice, afraid their loved one's name might come next. The weight of that role carved itself into him. Eventually, unable to bear the constant sorrow, Lorne left CBC to join the Royal Canadian Air Force. He narrated wartime films, including Fighting Norway and Churchill's Island, the latter winning an Academy Award. After the war, when CBC demanded a cut of his outside earnings, he quit and became a freelancer. It was another moment when he refused to let someone else control his career. In 1945, using the success of his stopwatch invention, he founded the Academy of Radio Arts in Toronto. Over 7 years, he trained 381 students. 90% found work in broadcasting. Leslie Nielsen and James Doohan were among them. Greene poured his soul into teaching, but he lacked business sense. Rent, equipment, and staff drained his savings. Around the same time, he co-founded the Jupiter Theatre, determined to build a Canadian voice in the arts. The theatre staged 15 plays before closing in 1954, but it left a small cultural legacy. Hollywood called him that same year. At 37, Greene moved south with a $3,000 scholarship from the Canadian government. Casting directors loved his voice but saw him as a villain. He refused to be typecast. Orson Welles heard him perform a monologue on television and praised him, giving Greene a credibility boost. He spent $500 on voice coaching to refine his accent. In 1953, he accepted a narrating job for The Heart of Time, a film about nuclear testing. But when he discovered the government-backed producers had cut footage showing animal deformities caused by radiation, he walked off the project and forfeited his $2,500 pay. The decision cost him work, but earned him respect among scientists and activists. By 1954, Warner Brothers signed him for $15,000 a year. While filming Tight Spot, he broke his nose performing his own stunts and refused painkillers so production wouldn't fall behind. The film made $1.2 million and gave him a reputation for toughness. Offers came, some lucrative, some not. He turned down a $25,000 soap opera contract to star in a science fiction radio drama, The Garrick Powers Story, for $300 an episode. He portrayed a scientist warning the public about radiation dangers. The show lasted only 26 episodes but placed him on the radar of environmental thinkers, including Linus Pauling. In 1957, he poured $15,000 of his savings into a new venture, Lorne Greene Enterprises. He planned a documentary about the War of 1812. The project needed $50,000, and NBC showed interest. But when the network demanded control of Greene's voice work for 5 years, he refused. The deal collapsed. He had already spent $35,000 on research and equipment. To cover losses, he sold his Burbank home for $16,000, $2,000 less than he'd paid for it 3 years earlier. The failure devastated him. That house had symbolized his arrival in Hollywood. From that moment forward, Greene insisted on tight contract clauses, profit participation, and creative input. Every hardship he had endured, the fire, the poverty, the nights spent building radios by candlelight, the ruin of his first Hollywood venture, shaped him into the man he would become. When Bonanza arrived, he was ready. But the early days were rocky. After just 16 episodes, the show ranked 4th to 5th and was close to cancellation. Greene threatened to quit, telling producers that Ben Cartwright felt cold and fake. They rewrote the character. By season 2, Bonanza climbed to number 2 in national ratings. Behind the scenes, though, tensions ran high. Greene clashed constantly with Ponderosa Roberts, their heated arguments sometimes so intense that crew members had to step between them. He debated fiercely with Michael Landon about creative direction. When Block had died in 1972, Lorne Greene said the show should have ended 6 seasons earlier, insisting it had lost its heart when Block passed. And through all the arguments, losses, and battles for artistic control, Greene carried the memory of that frightened boy from Ottawa, the one who slept on flour sacks, who rebuilt radios in secret, who refused to let someone else write his destiny. The truth behind the calm, commanding man on screen was darker, harder, and far more courageous than any Western he ever rode across. By 1952, the school had gone broke, and he was forced to shut it down, sell the building, and use whatever remained to move to Hollywood. That move nearly ruined him. Hollywood certainly did not welcome him with open arms. From 1952 to 1959, he heard repeatedly that his voice was too serious, that his presence was too stiff for romance or comedy, and that he was better suited only for stain or fatherly roles. In 7 years, he appeared in just a dozen television shows and 4 films, barely earning enough to survive. Quietly, he took voiceover jobs under false names simply to keep food on the table. By 1957, he was ready to give up entirely, but his wife urged him to stay 1 more year. That single year changed his entire life. In 1958, a performance he gave on the live television program Studio One caught the attention of a producer working on a new series called Bonanza. That opportunity opened the door, but the door did not swing wide all at once. Just before that lucky break, he accepted a small part in The Buccaneer with Yul Brynner and Charlton Heston. During sword training, he was cut so deeply in the leg that a small artery was severed, requiring 23 stitches. Filming was only weeks away, and he kept the injury secret, bandaging it himself and forcing himself to walk without limping. The wound burst open twice, and he received quiet treatment at a nearby hospital. Only his wife and his doctor knew how serious the injury was. The infection nearly killed him. Then, in 1959, he was offered a role in a new Western series. At 4 to 4, he was told he could choose between playing the father or the eldest son. Unsure which path to take, he asked advice from one of his former students, Leslie Nielsen. Nielsen told him plainly, "Play the father. He'll be the center of the story." He followed that advice and accepted the role of Ben Cartwright, signing a 7-year contract worth $20,500 per episode. The show would air in color, something extremely rare at the time. Bonanza premiered on September 12, 1959. It did not explode instantly, but he was already shaping it from the inside. After only 16 episodes, he threatened to quit. He argued that Ben Cartwright appeared cold, shallow, and emotionally hollow. He insisted the character should show warmth and real humanity, a father, not simply a man with a gun. At the time, the show ranked number 4 to 5 and was on the verge of cancellation. But the writers listened. By the 13th episode, they rewrote Ben Cartwright into a warmer, wiser figure. That adjustment not only saved the show, it became the very heart of Bonanza's long success. By 1961, the series had climbed to number 2 in the ratings. But success didn't erase tension. Even before the show reached its peak, trouble simmered behind the scenes. He clashed fiercely with Ponderosa Roberts, who played Adam Cartwright. Roberts felt he acted like a boss and tried to control too much. Their arguments grew so intense that producers sometimes had to separate them. He viewed himself as a leader. Roberts viewed him as a dictator. By 1964, he earned $2,500 per episode plus consulting bonuses. Roberts earned the same base salary but no additional pay, widening the gap between them. When Roberts finally left in 1965 after 202 episodes, Michael Landon joked, "We took one leaf out of the dining table and split the take 3 ways instead of 4. His desire to reshape the show came from something far deeper than ego. He had seen the worst of war. In the first season, during the 13th episode, he asked the producer, "Why are we always pointing a gun at someone?" He said the Cartwrights should offer kindness before violence. That one comment altered the show's entire tone. Bonanza became known for moral lessons rather than gunfights. It confronted issues like racism, justice, and human dignity, thanks largely to him and his own recollections from war service. By 1961, he earned $10,000 per episode. Yet few people knew that he quietly donated 20%, around $2,000 per episode, to Canadian war orphans. He had lost his own brother during the 1918 flu and had seen too many children abandoned during his time in Europe. He continued giving for over a decade, ultimately donating more than $400,000 by the end of Bonanza in 1973, the equivalent of nearly $2.8 million today. He did this in complete secrecy until an IRS audit revealed it years later. In Season 4, he directed his first episode, War Wagon, during the 1962-1963 season, when Bonanza ranked number 4. He rewrote a scene involving Dan Blocker to include a message about animal welfare. Several stunt crew members walked off in protest, but he refused to budge. His determination often made filming more difficult, yet he stood firm on what he believed mattered. In 1964, his personal life burst into headlines. While filming on location, he began an affair that tabloids quickly exposed. He had been married to Rita Hand since 1938, and they had twins born in 1944. The revelation shocked fans because his song Ringo had just hit number 1 on December 5, 1964 and remained at the top of the easy listening chart for 6 weeks. Feeling guilty, he helped write an episode centered on family values, trying to repair his public image while wrestling with regret. Ringo, a surprise hit, earned him about $500,000 in royalties. Many young listeners bought it assuming it was about Ringo's star, though it wasn't. He donated that money to anti-nuclear causes, shaped by his wartime work with Canada's National Film Board. He wrote letters to U.S. senators urging policy changes, knowing full well that such activism could alienate Bonanza's conservative viewers. He did it anyway. By 1966, a new conflict emerged, this time with Michael Landon. Landon wanted more romantic storylines to appeal to younger fans, but he objected, calling it a shallow distraction. When Landon began directing his own episodes, the show developed 2 competing visions. It became a quiet war in the background. With Roberts gone, he now found himself clashing with another on-screen son. Still, even under that pressure, he pushed the series toward weightier social themes. In Season 7, he helped craft episodes addressing racism, such as The Wish, and insisted Native American roles be played by Native actors. Hate mail flooded him, but the NAACP praised him for breaking stereotypes. Because Bonanza was one of the top 5 shows on television, these choices mattered. That impact was his doing. By the time Bonanza ended in 1973, he had become a household name after 14 years as Ben Cartwright. But in 1978, at 63, he took an unexpected leap into science fiction. That year he was cast as Commander Adama in Battlestar Galactica. It wasn't just a role, it was a reinvention. He went from ranch patriarch to humanity's spiritual and military leader in space. The original series aired from 1978 to 1979 with 21 episodes, and he returned in Galactica in 1980 for 10 more. His deep, commanding voice, once known as the voice of doom when he delivered wartime casualties on CBC radio, fit perfectly for a space commander. But this shift did not happen overnight. In 1971, while Bonanza was still on the air, He starred in a 2-hour TV film called The Harness, based on a John Steinbeck story. He played a farmer dominated by his ailing wife, a quiet and intimate role that revealed a level of vulnerability audiences rarely saw from him. The film, directed by Boris Sagal and co-starring Julie Summers and Murray Hamilton, earned an 8.0 rating on IMDb from 34 reviews. While the ratings mattered, what mattered more was how the performance proved he could stretch far beyond the wise patriarch. Meanwhile, his own personal life was evolving. He divorced Rita Hands in 1960 and remarried in 1961 to Nancy Deal, who remained with him until his death. Those emotional chapters in his life allowed him to take on roles with deeper complexity. After Bonanza, he made guest appearances in series like Mission Impossible and returned to documentary narration, echoing his early work from the 1940s when he narrated films such as Churchill's Island, War Clouds in the Pacific, and Inside Fighting China. His voice continued to be his greatest tool. In the mid-1970s, he used it to host environmental programs. From 1974 to 1975, he led Last of the Wild, a syndicated nature series. Then came his most successful later career project. In 1982, Lorne Greene's New Wilderness debuted on CTV. It ran for 104 episodes until 1987, the year he died. The program focused on wildlife, conservation, and the beauty of the natural world, allowing him to speak from the heart about subjects he truly cared for. Yet the pain from Bonanza's final years never fully left him. Season 12, which aired from September 13, 1970 to April 11, 1971, marked the beginning of the show's unraveling. Roberts had left years earlier, and the writing had begun to weaken. NBC interfered more and more. Though the season had 28 episodes, ratings dropped to number 9. He felt the soul of the show slipping away. He once said working during those final years felt like walking into a house where someone had died. During the last season in 1972 to 1973, he hoped the writers would allow Ben Cartwright to experience a divorce, reflecting his own life changes. NBC refused. They didn't want divorce or remarriage in a family program. He believed the storyline would have made the character more human, but the network rejected it. That disappointment deepened his belief that the show had lost its emotional core. In 1974, he told the Toronto Star that Bonanza should have ended after season 6. When Dan Blocker died in 1972, the heart of the show broke. NBC tried introducing new characters like Jamie Hunter, but nothing could replace the original chemistry. What hurt him most was how abruptly NBC canceled the show. They were told on a Monday that production would end on Wednesday. After 431 episodes, the final episode aired on January 16, 1973, an episode that wasn't even the last one filmed. He had imagined a proper farewell, perhaps little Joe marrying and riding off with his family. Instead, the series simply stopped. Afterward, he had difficult conversations with his former castmates. When talk of a Bonanza movie arose in the 1970s, he clashed with Michael Landon about how to honor the show's legacy. He felt some later TV movies failed to respect Dan Blocker's memory. He and Landon never fully resolved their disagreements, and tensions lingered until Landon's death in 1991. He passed away on September 11, 1987 at age 72 at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. It was not just pneumonia. He had undergone surgery for a perforated bleeding ulcer on August 5 and developed adult respiratory distress syndrome. He had been scheduled to begin filming Bonanza, The Next Generation, on October 24, but never had the chance. Around 500 people attended his funeral at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City. The chapel held 300, with another 200 standing outside listening through speakers during the 75-minute service. Michael Landon and Ponell Roberts both attended, an unspoken reunion of the Bonanza family. But his legacy did not end with that farewell. He had become chairman of the National Wildlife Federation, written Lorne Greene's book of remarkable animals, and continued inspiring viewers through New Wilderness. He became more than an actor. He became a guide, a storyteller, a voice for nature and humanity. His voice, which once brought wartime sorrow, eventually brought peace, wonder, and wisdom into people's homes. Even long before all that, He had carried the nickname Voice of Doom, born from the grave steadiness with which he delivered war updates. But as the war faded into memory, so did that association. His voice became one of hope for Canadians, and later the voice of America's most beloved television father. His final dream was to return once more to the role that made him famous, but fate denied him. Still, his influence continues. Shows like Yellowstone, with Kevin Costner as John Dutton, echo the archetype he helped define: the strong, principled patriarch who protects his land, his family, and his beliefs at any cost. That was his gift to television. His legacy lives not only in reruns but in every thoughtful, commanding father figure who followed in his footsteps.